Hi everyone, welcome back to another Gol Bezan podcast. Myself, Arya Alaverdi. I'm joined by Pasha Hajian and Pejman Pars. Today's topic is regarding the Legionnaires who played in Europe this previous season that's just gone by. We're going to quickly just discuss some of our key performers in Europe, like Jahan Bash, Osmoon. And we're going to just quickly go through their statistics and how they got on. And hopefully we can get on some new topics and discuss overall their performances this season. So I'm going to start with Pejman. Pejman, the first question comes to you about Jahan Bash and how he had his first season in England with Brighton Hove Albion. He obviously didn't score any goals, didn't make any assists, but he did have glimpses of something that you could get better. What do you think was of his performance this season?
Well, as you said, he had some glimpses, and I wonder if somebody that won the Golden Boots in Eredivisie are we happy enough? Is it enough for us to just have some glimpses? For me, I think Jahan Bash, as he said himself, he's not satisfied with this last season. And he probably started in the worst possible way, First, the coach didn't want to play him because, for taking some time to adapt to the system and to the club and to the league. So that's fine. And after some while, he got some playing time. And then he got bad luck with injuries. I think during the season, he got two injuries. And of course, the Asian Cup, which meant that he was gone for almost 2 months. 1 month for the entire Asian Cup and the month before for preparations. So when they needed him the most, or when he was in maybe his best shape, he wasn't able to be a part of the club. So I wouldn't say that Brighton have become worse or better with Jahan Bash, which itself means that it's not a good thing for Jahan Bash to hear something like that. He had some good opportunities. He was close to score, but here's the thing, and I think hopefully you guys agree with me. Moving to Brighton after the first season, we can see it was probably a mistake. It was a wrong club, because in us at Alkmaar, he could show his potential, not only because they're playing against weaker teams there, but also because he plays in a team where they just attack, which is just continue to use the left and right sides, which was patented by Jahan Bash. He did some great things there with his assists as well. Let's not forget about them. In Brighton, he did what he does in the national team. He was a much more defensive player. And we all know that that's not his strongest side. And maybe that's one of the reasons that he really couldn't be that player in the national team that he was at club level. So here's the good thing. I do believe that Jahan Bash is smart enough to evaluate this season that he had with Brighton and say, okay, this is the kind of player that I am, and this is the kind of player that I need to be in this club. And they have got a new interesting trainer as well. How can he adapt to the new system? Because if they're going to play defensively one more season, then he should probably change club, maybe to a championship club. I don't know, somewhere that they play attacking football. And of course, you forget about the top 6 in England, but I see teams like Everton and Leicester, and maybe even these up and down clubs such as Southampton and West Ham. I can see him playing those kind of clubs because they're usually much more offensive and like to use that kind of players that Jahan Bash have. So that's my take.
And Pasha, obviously Pejman talking about how he played the sort of way that he plays for Team Melli under Carlos Queiroz, quite a defensive style of football. But do you also think that, because in most of his career he's played as a right-sided player on the right wing, for Alkmaar he played the majority of his time on the right side. But in Brighton, under Chris Hughton, he was mainly playing as a left-sided player. Do you think that kind of affected him a little bit? Because you could see in some games he was kind of struggling to beat his fullback. He wasn't comfortable, coming inside. He didn't really want to use his left foot to cross. So do you think that affected him?
Well, first, I just want to say that, 5 years ago, we released our first ever pod at this time. So it's Gol Bezan's anniversary doing this pod, which is kind of cool. We were also recording this at this time. But going back to your question, I really don't think it matters. I mean, listen, he's a winger, right? So end of the day, whether a manager puts you to the left or the right, you got to still do your job, right? But the thing with Adrian Jahanbakhsh is, as I mentioned in this pod many times, is that I knew that Carlos Queiroz was not going to get best out of him. And as we saw in the Morocco match, Adrian Jahanbakhsh had to get taken off the field because, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work when a manager tells you that you got to track back and you also got to put in the shift forward. But as we saw with Nazir Al-Khamar, with the goals, he scored and the assists he gave, I mean, he's molded as a type of winger that he needs to be under an attacking manager. So under Chris Hughton, when he first signed, I had my doubts, especially that he's coming to a new era. He's coming to a new culture, new personas, and he's coming in a team that in English culture, that every single one of those players, they don't want to be leaving the EPL, so there's a lot of more competition. It's a very dog-eat-dog culture. And, I know that, he wasn't, he's not getting that same support that he was from his teammates, because a lot of those players, end of the day, they see him as a competition. I think right now, what the best thing that ever happened to him was actually a change of managerial, and then it comes back to, Graham Potter to see what kind of system he's going to fit, whether he's going to even play Adrian Jahanbakhsh, let's say even as a second striker, or he's going to play in a 4-3-3. But end of the day, my philosophy on wingers is that, yes, he's much been better on the right and stuff, but actually I think because he's a right-footed winger, that sometimes if he was playing on the left, maybe it would help him, cut in from the right. But my stance on Adrian Jahanbakhsh right now is that, listen, it was his first year. I wasn't expecting it to go the way it did for him, even with the injuries. But let's give this guy a chance. And I think right now the best thing that has happened to him, as I mentioned before, that Graham Potter came in and he worked with Salman. So he really, he understands sort of like a little bit thing about Iranian footballers. But end of the day, it comes back to Jahanbakhsh's mentality, and I'm pretty sure he'll be successful. But it's just more of the fact that now he understands what he's gotten himself into, and he's got to push through.
Okay, so I think one thing that Jahanbakhsh could also do for next season is when he's playing in a team like Brighton, I think that, especially this season where you watch, as much as I feel like, yes, it was a defensive style of football, I feel like there were times in games, if you ever watched Jahanbakhsh play this season, that he wasn't taking the initiative enough. Like, as a winger, he wasn't being confident to ask for the ball. He wasn't really being the kind of winger that you want to always have the ball at his feet, to always take on the fullback. For me, he was being a bit negative in his style. Even if it wasn't a defensive approach, you still expect him, whenever his team has possession, to always offer to receive the ball, which I don't think he was doing enough. I feel like as weeks went on, as months went on, and he was at Brighton, the longer he was at Brighton, I think he lost his confidence more, and that happened less. He got less.
Say one thing really quick on top. That's a great point. Before we move on to the next subject, I really do believe that's one of the main big reasons because of that is that in Nazir Al-Khamar, his teammates trusted him, and then he knew he was a leader, right? His manager was even on the pod mentioned to us that he would go and talk to the younger players because he wanted Adrian to do that. But now he's coming to a team that those players still do not trust Jahanbakhsh. Neither, I would say, even the player feels settled still, if that makes sense. So I think that's why we still haven't seen him to come as a leader, is because I feel like end of the day, Adrian is still as a stranger. He's still a stranger, I would say, even to his teammates still, and they feel as strangers towards him as well. So I think that will come in time. But then again, the EPL, I mean, how much time would you really have possibly as a player if you don't perform?
Yeah, and some people would argue that maybe Jahanbakhsh really isn't that kind of player who always wants to be on the ball. He's more of a sort of make a run and then pass the ball through to him rather than dribble. He's not really a dribbler. He's more of a runner. He's more of a guy who'll chase the ball for you, maybe get on the end of a cross or end of a through ball. He's not really much of a dribbler. So I think it was tough for him to play in a team where if you're going to try and score a goal, you have to build forward. You have to build out of defence, into midfield, into the attack. It's more about building through the thirds. But he was maybe more used to the sort of more fluid football, which I think was tough for him to transition to. But we'll move on. We'll move on to quickly just touch on these two if we can. About Ansari Farda Izzatullahi, who obviously played in the Championship. Ansari Farda was at Nottingham Forest. He transferred from Olympiacos, and then Izzatullahi moved from Rostov to Reading. What did you guys think of the performances? Of course, Saeed didn't play much this season. He only had maybe about 5 appearances, but in those games he was pretty good. And Ansari Farda maybe only did about 3 or 4, 5 goals, maybe less, maybe a little less than that. So, what do you guys think, Pejman?
Of course, it's a disappointment that the lack of play from Karim is something that he should be worried about. But then again, maybe he got himself to blame, to be honest. Listen, he played in the World Cup. He actually scored a goal, but never mind. He played in the World Cup, and he knew his contract situation with his former team in Greece, Olympiacos. He done great there. Well, let's say, was it after the World Cup until November? He didn't have any club, and that's not the proper way to manage yourself. So I blame him, or probably I would say his agents, but then we all know in Iran this is kind of shady, who's actually your agent and what you're doing. But nevertheless, he should, even maybe during the World Cup or before the World Cup, already have a plan for what he will do after the World Cup. He didn't have any plan, or if he had any plans, we didn't see them go the way he wanted. So he didn't find a club until November. And of course, it's hard to settle in the middle of the season, coming to a new club, a new manager, players, city, everything is new. So it takes time to adapt, no matter how good you are. So he's there maybe for like a couple of weeks or something, and then he has to go to the Asian Cup. So Nottingham was like, what are we even getting here? A player that comes for a couple of weeks and then he's gone for almost 2 months. When he returned, he got some playing time. He was a sub every now and then, playing 4 or 5 minutes here and there. I think, if I'm not mistaken, he played around less than 90 minutes before the Asian Cup. That's all the subs he got together, 5 minutes here and there. So it's a shame. But after the Asian Cup, he did make some points, some assists. But come on, there is like 42 games in Championship. Of course, you're supposed to score some goals as a striker. So it's nothing strange with that. He got some problems with the new manager team, or not problems. They didn't have faith in him. Easy as that. So his future in Europe is really uncertain. Will he go back to Greece, where he's a famous face and have done really good with both Panionios and Olympiacos, or will he try to earn his spot in Championship, which is probably a better league than the Greek league? Yeah, it's really hard to say. I don't know. What do you say, Arya?
I mean, it's hard, because obviously he came off, being our only goal scorer in the World Cup, and I feel like for Ansari Farda, it's a case of similar to Jahanbakhsh in a lot of ways, that he had a successful career in Greece with a much weaker league. You could say I think the Championship's a much better league than the Greek league. And I think that, scoring, I think it was 17 goals in his season for Olympiacos. I think it was hard for him to then go to a league that's stronger. And then, after you've had that good season, it's kind of hard to build on it in a stronger league, because it makes that step much tougher to reach. I think that for him, maybe at nearly, at the end of his sort of peak, reaching his peak of his career, it was kind of hard it was a really big step for him. So I think that maybe a step back down, like you said, going to Greece or maybe even like Holland or something like that could be good for him for next season. I don't think he'll make it in Championship, unfortunately. I just don't think he has enough to make it in that league. Pasha, coming to you about Said Izzatullahi, he's one of probably our best players. We missed him in the Asian. I think if we had him for the Asian Cup, we could have won it with him in midfield. I think he was a critical player that we saw how good he was in the World Cup for us. We didn't have him for the Morocco game, but in the Spain and Portugal game against top players, he was unbelievable. And obviously he started a good season for Reading. How do you think it affected him being injured for that long? And how do you think he'll bounce back from that?
Said Izzatullahi is a player that, especially under Carlos Queiroz, he would make things thick. He was the heart and mold, I would say, of that midfield. And because of him, it was easier transition plays through him. He's molded to be playing in the English league. I mean, especially at the age he is in, the physique he is in, and everything. I mean, he's somebody that I've always had high admiration for. And let's not forget, while Said Izzatullahi didn't have a club, he would still keep getting called back from Carlos Queiroz, and he was still, performing very well at the highest level. And that shows you, I mean, what kind of a player he is that Carlos Queiroz rated him, especially at the age he's in. And he obviously was back-to-back player of the year in the reigning league when he was playing for Malabon at such a young age, at age of 16, if I'm not mistaken, that he was starting. And now he comes to Reading, and he's done so well. I mean, this is before he got injured. And then when he just got back, he saw some of his teammates recording him and calling him Sergio Busquets. I mean, it's a very high praise, But the thing with Said that has always been question marks over him is his mentality. I mean, how big of a player does he want to be? And, I mean, he's been linked right now to Leeds. I mean, that would be a good move for him, end of the day. But I think that one of the big reasons why that, we didn't achieve winning the Asian Cup, and I think he would have been such a key part of it, was, him being there. I mean, he is such a key player for us. I mean, we don't have a player like him right now. And, he's somebody that is definitely an asset. But as I mentioned before, it comes back to the player's mentality. So right now that he's back with the national team and everything, it just depends that, how far is he trying to go, where his mentality is, where does he see himself in the future? Because end of the day, we see a lot of our players that they make the right decision moving to a good club, and next thing you know, they decide to go take it the easier route, whether that's going to Qatar or Kuwait or UAE. But it depends now that he's made a name for himself at Reading. It depends if the next manager, right now the manager wants to keep him. But right now I could tell you that he definitely has suitors coming for him, and the player is just going to keep developing. And it'll be interesting what it's going to happen under Mark Wilmot. But I was very impressed by him this season. Especially I was very impressed to see how big of a support group he got himself through Reading. And it's a good future. And then for Karim, I think Karim is pretty much, I mean, he's done and dusted. And I think one of the big reasons why that he was in the championship wasn't because of the player. I think just because of how big of his agent is, that he has close ties to the club, that he was able to get him that deal done. That's something that sometimes we tend to forget. And, I feel like Karim will always be a second striker coming in. And it's unfortunate, but end of the day, it's football. I mean, it's a tough business.
Yeah, and I hope that Izzatullahi has a good season next season, and because I think that he can break into the Premier League and do well. Okay, moving on to Russia, we had Osman. He obviously started his season with Rubin Kazan, and he got his transfer. I think it was after the Asian Cup to Zenit St. Petersburg, and he was unbelievable this season. I think if I'm not mistaken, he got 11 goals, and he was unbelievable. He had a fantastic end of the season. He obviously won the league with them, and I think he finished second top goal scorer within the league, which is again a fantastic achievement for him. What do you guys think of Osman's season? Coming off the Asian Cup where he was fantastic, but also, leaving Rubin Kazan. We expected him, we thought that maybe going to Zenit was going to be a tough move for him because it's a bigger club, but how much did he prove to you guys that he's a real deal? We'll start with Pejman.
For me, it was a hallelujah moment almost, because we all know about the potential in Osman, But we also know, the kind of, let us say, weakness, this mental weakness that he have, and also that we know that in Russia he won't be able to get out the best of him, or at least, let's say, in Rubin Kazan or maybe even in Rostov, although they played in the Champions League. Yeah, so we all wanted to see him in a better league, maybe not a better club, like a middle team in England, or maybe one of the better clubs in Belgium or Holland would be interesting. But the move to St. Petersburg was a really good one, it turned out, because the way St. Petersburg plays, they're expected to win every game, so they have to attack. They have to give their forwards, Artur Juba and Osman, good opportunities to score. And that's maybe one of Osman's strongest selling points. If you give him opportunities, he will do really good. We all know that in the air, to be honest, he's better than Adedaye was. He's better than the helicopter Vahid Hashemian. Because sometimes, it's strange. When he jumps to score a goal via header, he just seems to stay there, floating above everyone else, 1-2 feet over them. So it's really interesting. So the thing is, now the door have opened for other clubs to see that Osman should be considered the real deal. Should he stay in St. Petersburg and play some Champions League football? Why not? At least for the upcoming 6 months ahead of him during until 2020, I do believe it would be interesting. Then when the window opens in January, I believe, if he still keeps performing, he have to move somewhere else. And I don't want him to move to a super good club, or at least a club where he won't get any playing time, like maybe say Inter or Milan or whatever. But a club just beneath the top clubs in the top 5 leagues would be interesting. Let's say, I don't know, Sevilla, although they're considered above, like a good team, but they've been struggling. As I mentioned before, Everton, don't forget that they have an Iranian owner. Maybe they can do something there. So all in all, I'm really pleased to see that we could see the best out of Osman, and he needs to play in those kind of clubs as well.
Pasha?
Yeah, the thing with Sardar is that people just fueled him, right? Especially during the World Cup with the controversy that a lot of, unfortunately, our fans did by mocking him on social media and everything, just keep fueling him, and then you saw he came back, was a decent performer in the Asian Cup, and he showed under attacking manager what he could do. He's a fabulous footballer, and we should take advantage of him, at this age. And like Pejman pointed out, and as we see sometimes the posts that Sardar Osman does, even on social media, specifically Instagram, that aren't very professional, that's where the issue comes. That's where the issue comes with Osman, is that how far does this player want to go? Right now he's playing for Zenit. He will be playing in the Champions League next year, which is fabulous. But then again, he's obviously going to have, Zenit even officially confirmed that there has been bids for him, to somebody else to take him away. But the thing with Osman, he's shown the world that he has a talent. Even when he was playing for, I believe it was Rostov, he scored against the likes of Bayern Munich. It doesn't matter. He's doing that. Only the Asian continent region would know about him. But it's just more of the player for now to realize that, hey, I'm showing the world what kind of player I am. Let me keep moving on. Let me keep striving on what I could do. And that's where it just comes down to Osman. That's my only issue with Osman, is that not to say how good of a striker he is, but how far is this kid gonna strive to get the best out of himself? That's the question that we need to ask Osman, and that's my biggest issue with him.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Osman, again, similar to Saeed Azzatullahi, both of them are fantastic players, but it's the mentality of the player and how much do they want to, how much ambition do they have, to actually get to the next level and break into these top teams. Not now, like what Pejman said, but in the future, when they get in their prime years, 25, 26, 27, do they want to become, world-class players because they have that potential. And it's really about how much ambition they have, because at this point, Iran have the opportunity to give these players the chance to play in the World Cup and show themselves, but they have to also to show themselves on the world stage in the Champions League, going to bigger clubs, bigger leagues. So we'll see what happens with him.
Hey, this is Arash Markazi from ESPN, and you're listening to Gol Bezan, your one-stop shop for all your Iranian soccer news.
We'll move on to Milad Mohammadi very, very briefly, because obviously not got too much to say about him. But Milad's been at Ahmad Grozny now for 3 seasons, consistent seasons. And he's been, 4 seasons, and he's been basically consistently making 25, 30 appearances per season. He's been really consistent for his whole career in Russia. But do you guys think it's a time for a new move for him? Do you think it's a time that he has to move on? Because I feel like for him, not playing in the World Cup as a starter, maybe could have been due to not playing for a really big team at the time. Hoysafi was playing for Olympiacos, and he was a left back for the national team. Do you think that he has to now move somewhere to get a better career? We'll start with Pasha.
Sorry, who were we talking about?
Milad Mohammadi.
I mean, the thing with Milad is obviously we've seen him just sign with one of the biggest sport agencies in the world, and now he's a free agent, so he could do whatever he wants. And I do believe that obviously he's gonna have suitors. I believe he's even linked with Celtic and Rangers, if I'm not mistaken. So he might be coming around close to your area.
Oh, I hope not.
But he's a fabulous, left back. I would say that arguably you could even consider him we could say that he's probably the best right now left back in the Asian continent region, if you wanted to argue that. Some people would say it's the Qatari left back, but, I have my doubts over him as well. But the thing with Milad is that he's proven himself under Carlos Queiroz. He's proven how vital of a key figure he was in the World Cup qualifications. And he was a great player for his, former team right now in Russia. But then again, it comes down to, his mentality again. Sometimes on social media, I feel like sometimes he cares more about posting a lot about religious things than football related. But that's another issue. But, Milad is a very shy guy, very quiet, down to earth. I don't know much about him. In the sense that how big of a mentality does this kid have to keep moving it forward. But he's shown us that, what a big player he was. And I think he was honestly our best player for the World Cup qualifications, I would say, because of how consistent of a performer he was. But he's gonna have suitors. He just signed with one of the biggest agents in the world. They're definitely gonna find him a club. But then again, it depends on where he wants to go. And I'm sure he'll stay in Europe, but I hope it's a very top league, at least top 3 or top 4.
Okay, so we'll move on. We'll speak about Pejman's boy, Salman Ghoddos, who had his first season in France with Amiens, where he obviously transferred in the summer from Östersund in Sweden. He had a good season. He did score goals. He was playing as a striker, as a winger, as an attacking midfielder. He was, probably the most important player for his team. Pejman, you've been to some of his games. How do you think he got on this season?
He started off really well. It was a big surprise, more or less. I think, if I'm not mistaken, like 48 hours after the contract, he started the game and he actually scored. So, yeah, it was a real surprise, and he continued to get some points and do good in the beginning. And then it got a little bit harder, a little bit tougher. And I saw, I won't say all of the Amiens games, but I saw a lot of the games. And man, it's a crappy team. Amiens is one of the strangest teams I've seen, to be honest, because physically, they're so strong. They're really powerhouses of the players. But the lack of technique is obvious, and someone had a little hard time to adapting, I do believe, because in Östersund, he was the star. The players fed him a lot of balls, and he knew when to run and where to run to get the ball and how to score goals. He had a bit of problem in Amiens because he wasn't a superstar there. To be honest, they don't have any superstars there, but they have a couple of players there. There are probably higher ranked because they've been there both in the French league and in Amiens a lot of years. So he did. I do believe that he felt a bit frustrated that he didn't get the balls that he wanted, as we could see in the national team as well. He got a bit frustrated that we could see Taremi and Azmoun linking up really good together, but that meant that Samuel Rodus was left out of that equation. And then he went, of course, to the Asian Cup, was away for some time from Amiens. The team kept struggling. He came back and he got injured, and he was away for some while. And when he returned, it took a lot of time for him to get a full 90 minutes. He was either on the bench or he get some subs, and he made a couple of starts. And it was not until the very last game that they avoid relegation in France. To be honest, I do believe his season is okay. He's done good. I think he scored 4 goals, something. That's not a lot, but he didn't play all the games either. Next season is probably the most important season for him, because you don't have any World Cup that will be in the way. You don't have any Asian Cup that will be in the way. So he will have a full season with Amiens from the beginning to the very end. And hopefully he's fit, and then it's really important for him to show himself for the French, bigger and better French team if you want to continue there. Because if I'm not mistaken, it's like a 5-year contract, and I don't believe that he will stay in Amiens for 5 years. And I'm sure if the team will get relegated, he will move. But maybe that's not so good to have on your CV. It would be better to see him playing maybe Marseille or Lille, or maybe why not Lyon, Nice, a better French team that can use his technique and use his speed much better. So, but Amiens is shit. Sorry.
No, I agree. I've watched him play this season, and they have been pretty horrendous. But the one thing about Rodus is, I don't know if Pasha will agree with me, but Rodus is already, in my opinion, a very complete player in terms of he has the whole package. He has technical skills, he has the physical attributes, he has the experience of playing in the Europa League, in the World Cup, in the Asian Cup.
اشکان میفرسته توپو، برگشتش، حالا قدوس، بوم بوم بوم، آتش بازی پایان نداره برای پسران ایرانی.
He's a pretty complete player now. I think that he's a player who just needs that extra push somewhere. He has to be playing consistently somewhere. You know what I mean? Because I think, like, for Iran in the World Cup, he probably deserved to start at least one of the games. In the Asian Cup, I feel like, especially against Japan, I feel like he should have played. And I just feel like there's times where he may have been a bit let down by coaches. Not by Queiroz, but I'm saying in general. I think in his career, I think he's, even in Amiens, I think he was times where he was left out of the squad.
By Queiroz too, to be honest. Sorry,
yeah, and Queiroz as well.
By Queiroz too.
Yes, and Queiroz too, of course. Like I say, in the World Cup and Asian Cup, I feel like there was times where he was left out unfairly, and I feel like he would have been so important in those games. Like, for example, he won't be with us in the next 2 friendlies against Syria and South Korea, but I feel like we need him in these games because he's the kind of guy who will just link the attack to the midfield. Pasha, what do you think? Do you think that he obviously his season was okay, but what do you think for him in the future? Do you think you want to see him move somewhere or what?
From the team he is right now?
No, I mean, just like in general, what do you want to see him do in his future? Because obviously he's so complete right now.
I really want to see someone in the Bundesliga, to be honest with you. I feel like with the way attacking, brains he has, and with that way that league is going forward, obviously with the German style of football, I think he'll really, really thrive there. But the thing with Salman right now is that I'm really happy about is that, as we saw, he really quickly got himself being part of that coherent culture of Iranian football. He's quickly adapted to his teammates, which is a big part of it, as you can see from social media and everything. But now the question comes is that, he is going to be playing now under a new coach, and that's in, Mark Wilmots. And then we just have to see of how, let's put it this way, if he's going to even be an attacking manager. And if he is, I think that's going to be a key beneficial thing for Salman, that we could even potentially see Salman potentially even be playing as a 10 or even be playing on the wing. Salman has proven to all of us that how talented of a player he is. He was a big-time player this season for his club. He scored some of the most ridiculous goals, and he's just a fantastic player. And let's not forget right now that Graham Potter just signed with Brighton, and he'll be taking another quick look at his former player and seeing that, hey, maybe I could use Salman in the EPL. But I think I like to see more Salman be playing more in the more of an attacking league, as more as a physical league as we see in England. But we should be very, very happy that Carlos Queiroz picked him up, because Salman was very close to signing with Sweden. And but now, there's no question about his mentality. He just wants to keep going forward, and he has everything to make it to the very best. And he's already shown he's a big time player in the French league.
Absolutely. Okay, so we'll move on to a guy who I've been watching quite a lot this season. You could call him my boy, which is Majid Hosseini, and obviously his teammate in Trabzonspor, Vahid Amiri, who transferred from Persepolis, and Majid Hosseini came from Esteghlal in the summer. Both of them had fairly good. Majid Hosseini had a really good season. Vahid Amiri had an okay season. He didn't really get that many starts. He was basically a sub for most of the season. I'll obviously speak about him, but I want to hear you guys' opinions first. Pejman, I don't know if you watched his games, but what did you think of Majid Hosseini's first season in Europe?
As you said, I think you should be the one to talk a lot about Majid, so I will keep it short and briefly. I've seen a couple of games, but mostly highlights. And I think the move to Trabzon have been so important for him, so good for the national team. And I do believe that this is a guy that will hopefully be our best defender the coming 10 years, if he can continue like this. Trabzon did really, really good, and they came fourth, right? Like it was Besiktas. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, they finished. Yeah, so we'll think it was
just under Besiktas, Galatasaray, and Istanbul. Basak.
Yes.
Sorry about the name. And he was solid. He was benched a couple of games, of course. It's really hard to be solid in the complete season. But look at his age. This is the first time he's moving to Europe. And look at his experience in Iran. He's been like 1-2 seasons with Esteghlal.
I think he played like one season in Esteghlal, yeah. Basically.
Yeah. So his development have been amazing. But you have seen him a lot in Trabzonspor. How do you consider, what kind of changes have you seen in his game from the time in Esteghlal to Trabzonspor?
Well, certainly in Esteghlal, you could see how he was a talented player. Schaefer gave him a lot of responsibility, because there were good defenders in that Esteghlal team. First of all, there was Ruzbe Cheshmi, Montazeri, Armin Sorabian. There was already solid defenders that were older in that team. Cheshmi's world class. But yeah, there were great players in that team already. But he kind of just came out of nowhere and started playing ahead of them, Montazeri, etc. Who, in that one season, it showed that he had the talent. Obviously, Trabzonspor came in, they bought him. And I feel like in his first season, it showed a bit of maturity because, he came up against tough teams, Galatasaray. I think they beat them. I think in his first game against them, they won 4-0. 4-0, and he was one of the best players on the pitch. He did struggle for injuries. He had a couple of injuries before the Asian Cup, luckily we had him for the Asian Cup, but unfortunately, some of you can see he didn't have the best Asian Cup. For me, he did make mistakes that could have cost us. Luckily for us, it didn't cost us. His mistakes didn't actually cost us because obviously Bezan made the penalty save and he didn't get sent off. But I think that he made mistakes that could have cost him. But again, he came out of the World Cup against Portugal and Spain. He showed what kind of class he has. So good thing that came out of the Asian Cup was that he got the experience. And then when he came back from the Asian Cup back into the league in Turkey, his confidence was still high. Which is something that is very rare in Iranian footballers, that when they're put down, when they're being criticised by people for making mistakes, usually they crumble under the pressure. But for Majid Hosseini, one of the things that I like about him is his mentality. Is he's very he doesn't really care what other people. He's not on social media. He's not really on Instagram too much. He doesn't really make that many posts. He's very private, and he gets on with his job and is very professional about it. I think that's one thing that was really good to see, that after the Asian Cup he came back and he was again one of the best defenders in the league, and obviously he was so good that his team finished fourth. And I think that is a fantastic achievement for him. Hopefully, next season that he continues it. If he wants to stay in Trabzonspor, he'll play in the Europa League. Maybe there's been rumours of Spanish teams coming in for him. I think his style of football is good for that because he's got that sort of ball-playing centre-back. He can use the ball really well, and I think that a Spanish team would suit him. But we'll see. I think he's got a lot to prove on still, but I think, like Pejman said, he could be our defender for the next 10 years. Pasha, have you got anything else to add on this?
The only thing I would add is that I think, at the age, I believe he's 22, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he's 22.
I would say the center back brains. He definitely has the brains of a center back compared to the likes of other defenders that we have. And I would say on his day, he's the best center back we have. And, to show what the level he's playing is phenomenal. It's funny because when I was speaking to last year with Esteghlal, former coach Winfried Schaefer, one of the names that he mentioned to me that he thought that he would excel in Europe was actually Majid Hosseini. And, that says a lot. So good for him. He's done fabulous in the Turkish league. He's gained himself a lot of Turkish fans as well. But then again, it comes back to every single of our players. They're progressing, but what's next? Is he going to make the silly move of going now to Qatar or back to Iran? Or is he going to end up actually in a better league? That's a question, and that would really show us what kind of mentality he has. But I really also admire that how private he is, and that he doesn't make all these silly, Insta posts and stuff like our players do. So he's got his head until everything's straight, and for now, he's on the right path.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that hopefully, it's good that him and Prali Ganji have built a partnership. So hopefully in the next couple of years that continues. But there are other defenders who are good, so he has to keep his head in the game because there's people who come up like Kanoni, etc., who can take his spot.
Before we move on, and it shows you what kind of player center back he is. Like Carlos Queiroz did not call up Jalal Hosseini, his veteran.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
World Cup, and he relied on some guy that he's barely started or barely has got to know him on a personal level, but trusted this kid to get him to call up to the World Cup squad. That says a lot. And look at how well he performed. He wasn't the best in the Asian Cup. I would say he's actually probably was one of our worst players. Sorry, Arya. It's just how he was. And, but for him to come back from that tournament and still do a decent amount of job for his club team, he's a fabulous center back. And I just hope he keeps it up.
That's it. Like you said, he has to just, improve and keep progressing. Like Prali Ganji, you can't really stagnate in that kind of league. Okay, I don't think we'll speak about Amiri because I don't think he had a good season. I think that he kind of struggled to show himself. I think he's probably past his peak now. I think that it's time for him to kind of go to Qatar and get some money. We'll move on to Belgium. Because it's probably our last country we're gonna go to. Belgium, we have 3 players currently there. Golizade and Delphi for Charleroi, and then we have Kaverizai for Club Brugge. Obviously, there's Noor Afghan and Naderi who are out on loan to Iran, but they'll be back next season. But for now, we'll speak about Qolizadeh and Delphi, who had good seasons for Charleroi. What do you guys think about their careers as they move forward? Of course, they had good seasons. They're very young players. They're both wingers. But how do you think that they can progress now on solid seasons, Pejman?
What Qolizadeh needs is a complete season without getting injured. For me, he is one of Iran's most interesting players, and the move to Charleroi was a great move for him. I think he would be a definite team melee member for the upcoming years if he continues like this. His style of play is irrational. His technique is really improved, I do believe. Although he has some good techniques in Saipan, but doing that in Belgium is a bit harder. He seemed to have a lot of trust, or the coach seemed to have a lot of trust in Qolizadeh because he played a lot of the games actually. And I think when he went there, Kaverizai were there already. So the adaptation parts was a bit smoother than maybe somebody who's never been in a club or it's the first time abroad. So I'm really happy that Qolizadeh was able to have a successful season in Charleroi, which in my mind I believe he had. So next season he needs to step up his game even more. He needs to be that player that we could see in the highlights that we saw every now and then in Charleroi, and hopefully cement his place both in Europe and in the national team, because in my opinion that's how good he is.
Yeah, and I actually think that Jahanbakhsh has a real competitor now, because obviously I think Taremi's pretty much guaranteed a left winger spot at the moment because he was so good for us in the Asian Cup. But I think that the right side of our attack is between him and Jahanbakhsh, and I think at the moment I'd pick Qolizadeh because I think he's an unbelievable player. Pasha, what do you think about Delphi? And obviously I know you didn't see a lot of him, but how do you think that a young player like him, 17 years old, can come into Europe and play the way he has? I think he played when he joined them. Literally the next week he started his first game, and then he got a couple of injuries, but he's played again. He got an assist. He got a goal. What do you think about him? How do you think he'll get on?
I think he's actually considered now our youngest ever Legionnaire in our history to even start in the European League at the age of 18, which is phenomenal. I mean, he's shown it even that U17 World Cup of how great of a player he was, and then also it goes with Said Manish too. And the thing with Delphi is he has this kind of cocky mentality that he thinks he's, from what I've been told from many things that it's been working for him, is that I'm better than everybody else. And as you could tell from his interviews and the way he looks at the game, or just his facial expressions and everything, he has this ooze of confidence that that it's working for him, but then also it could backfire to him, at such a young age, that thinking that you're better than everybody else. When we interviewed Qolizadeh, if you guys, I definitely recommend to our fans who are listening to this to definitely check out that interview. The English transcript is up on the side. Qolizadeh quickly said that this kid's phenomenal. Just right off the bat. I mean, he didn't even hesitate when I asked him. And it's a fantastic move for him, and as he said, he quickly started, and it just depends, on how well he does with, his team right now that Qolizadeh is playing in Charleroi and where he goes from here. But, I mean, he's known to be one of our best players coming from the Iranian League at such a young age. He had a trial with PSV that it didn't seem like it worked out, but that's fine. But for him to even get that chance to, even have a test with that top of a team, shows you what kind of talent he is, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see him getting called up to the national team really quick. And one thing I do want to say about that Qolizadeh is that some kid that is so humble and down to earth and he has everything set up for him, he's gonna excel far. And he's such an interesting player as a street footballer because we could Wilmot has a ability now to put him as a right winger or on the left or even as a 10, And this is the first time I would say, guys, and God does in our history that like our squad depth, maybe not so much in center mid and so much at center back, but so much I would say more towards the like of center forwards and wingers that we have depth, and that is amazing to me of what kind of squad Carlos left us.
And it's getting bigger now. You know, you have Mehrdad Mohammadi going to Europe, you have Sayed Manesh going to Fenerbahce possibly. So it's getting even bigger. So it's really good to see. I think we'll leave Kove. I think Kove's season was tough. I think he went to Club Brugge, played a couple of games, and then I think he just kind of fell off the season. I don't think he really showed enough. He had injuries. I hope for him that he does get a chance to go back to Charleroi. I think that he had a good time there. I think that's a good club for him. And I think that going to Club Brugge, I think it might have been a bit of a rush. I think he kind of, it was too early for him. I think he should have stayed at Charleroi a little bit longer. But, you know, he made a mistake. Hopefully he goes back if he can. Last one, and then we'll finish it off. So far it's been a good podcast. We'll finish it off.
Can I say one thing? It's
Yes.
still not concreted, but there's talks that Club Brugge is selling back Kaveh Rezai back to his former club. So have an eye on that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's perfect. That's good. Great. I think he would do really well at Charleroi again. I think that's a good club for him. Lastly, Pejman, I'm going to ask you. You know, I don't know if you didn't really watch Moharami play as much, but Moharami had a pretty good season for Dynamo Zagreb in Croatia. He won the league with them. I think he played about 20 games, which is quite good for a player who was pretty much a rotational player. He was playing as the second choice right back to is it Stojanovic? I think that's the guy's name. That he was basically his replacement most of the time, but he did play 20 games. How do you think he can get on for the national team? Obviously, he missed out on the Asian Cup through injury. What do you guys think of him, Pejman?
Well, as you mentioned, he's been a rotator player, but still it's good and important to get some experience and playing time in Europe and in Croatia's best club probably ever. And this season they were phenomenal. You know, they I don't believe, did they lost any games in the
They may
league?
have lost a few games, yeah, but they were pretty dominant.
Yeah. So I think he should stay in Dinamo Zagreb and get some playing time in Europe. That would be really, hopefully he will get some playing time in Europe. As you said, he's a rotational player. And also, as you said, about the national team, I do believe that he can be a real force to be reckoned with. That right spot, you know, we have Rami Rezayan, we have also Vuria Ghafouri, let's not forget about him, and we have Sader Maharami. So, you know, we're not spoiled with these kind of choices now. We haven't been spoiled, but now we are, you know. For me, any of those three players would do for me. I actually do hold a soft spot for Rami, not only because of his wonderful Instagram and what he does there, but he really performed good during Carlos Queiroz time. In the World Cup, for me, before the games, he was like probably the weakest link, but during the World Cup, he was really solid. But he made a stupid mistake to move to Qatar, but he did it only to get some playing time for the Asian Cup. But what would let me say this: the faith of Sader Maharami lays in Rami Rezaya's hands, because if Rami will continue to play in Qatar, then I do believe that Mark Wilmots will have a much easier time to pick Sader Maharami as a starter on the right side. So,
and just touching on your point about that, Pasha, I think you said earlier that Queiroz actually favoured Maharami for the Asian Cup for that right back position.
Yeah, I would say he did, and I was told by one of his staff members that Carlos rated him very highly, even more so than Ramin. And I asked why, and the first thing he told me is because Ron took the child. He has a negative mentality and everything. And, so Adamo Army is obviously playing for one of the best teams in the world, and, I don't know much about the player. I don't know much. I mean, he was successful with Persepolis, but I don't know much about him in the sense that, I keep talking about mentality because, guys, as we all know, our players, there's always a mentality issue, is that how far they're going to make it, right? So I don't know how of a big mentality this player has that, after now Dynamo, where is he going to go next? But on his day, if he wasn't injured and before the Asian Cup, I would say that he was going to take Ramin's position, and Ramin got lucky, and I would say if you guys have paid close attention, the reason why a lot of the times Ramin Rezaian is posting a lot of pics of him working out and stuff like that and everything is because Ramin deep down knows that he has very, very much competition with Sadek now. And, it's good. It's a good, healthy competition. And then now it depends on who the new manager is going to fancy. Obviously, I would still say that Wilmot is going to still start Ramin, going off of more of, the team sheet that Carlos Queiroz, has for him to start understanding which players he best fit him. So now we're going to see he's going to probably still play the oldies, I would like to say, of Carlos Queiroz, because he's still trying to figure out the team himself, and with the likes of, Vaida Hashimian being part of his staff, which congrats to him, much well deserved. But, again, great depth, right? And then now we have Mohamedi, as he said, now he's gonna be Milad's brother, is gonna be playing in Portugal, so let's see how far that player goes. If he's gonna get called up to the national team, everything is going well, and so far so good for our football,
Yeah, so far so good, and so far I think that the national team has some great Legionnaires. I think next season we have to look forward to it. Look forward to the new boys going out. Syed Manish just got called up for the national team. If he goes to Europe, we can speak about him this time next year and see how he got on. We'll wrap it up now. We'll say our thank yous. Thank you very much for listening, and make sure you guys check out last podcast about working with Wilmots is getting in charge of the national team and what Sina, Babak, Pejman and Pasha thought about that. Also check out the interviews that we did with Gol Bezan and Abid Zadeh quite recently. We'll have new podcasts coming out soon. Thanks for listening. See you next time.